Talk about low-budget flights. No food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. So before we get into today's video, I'd like to remind you all of my 100 subscriber goal by June 11th, which I thought might actually happen, but after the or lack thereof, success or lack thereof of my previous two videos, I don't know if that's going to happen. My video Sonic's Future Worries Me did very well, and so did my video on Sonic Adventure Remakes did well, but my videos on How to Train Your Dragon 1 and surprisingly the second part of my Ninjago retrospective have bombed so at the time of recording this. So if you're watching this and you haven't seen those, I'd like you to check those out. So without further ado, skadoosh, and let's get on to this. So of course, today's video is my review of Kung Fu Panda 2. And you can't obviously can't talk about this movie without starting with the main character, Po. This is definitely my favorite character arc Po has to go through in the movies. It's not a well, I suppose this is a lot better than this, but I still like his arc from the first movie a lot. So, well, I definitely would prefer this. Whether this is much better than that one or just a little bit better is up for you to decide. But whatever. So yeah, in this one, Poe has to learn inner peace by making peace with his past that will obviously give him, well, inner peace. He's great here, just like always. I mentioned when I just did a video on the trilogy in general that when I saw this movie, I thought he's just gonna have to learn the same thing again. But no, as the movie went on, I realized that this is not the same arc as before. It's interesting. Well, I like how he has to learn this from Shifu, as Shifu has already achieved inner peace now that he confronted Tai Lung. Tai Lung is dead too, and Po is now the Dragon Warrior, so he's fine, which also means Shifu does practically nothing, but it's okay. He's still important for when he's there. Po is still just as lovable as he is always, but of course things take a turn for the worst once he finds out that Shen, the main villain in this movie, and his wolf army have some connection to his past, aka why he's the last panda alive, because Shen led his army to murder every single panda alive. Yeah, that's a lot for a DreamWorks movie, but I'd say they handled it very well. Nothing is super in your face, but it still treats the audience with maturity like they should, which they treat them with maturity and more these days. Anyway, yeah, and I've always really liked this. One of the reasons I like this arc especially is that you just never see a ton of. I mean, because it depends where you look. Maybe I just don't see it that much, but I don't tend to see the story of the main character anyways, making peace with his past that much. And this is probably my favorite example of ever being handled. Well, except for maybe Shifu in the first movie. Just interesting, especially his lines that he gets at the end of the movie from the soothsayer. Your story may not have had a happy beginning, but that does not make you who you are. It is the rest of your story, who you choose to be. And if Poe didn't have this character arc, I think I might actually prefer Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon over Poe as for animated movie protagonists. Great arc he gets here. Also, yeah, even though the story is darker and he has to go through all this and confront his past and how he was adopted and everything, it doesn't change his personality. He's still fun. He's still goofy. His character never changes in this movie. Well, it does. It develops, obviously, but his personality never really changes that much. He's still the same guy. And I'm glad the writers were able to pull that off. Then, of course, the action of this movie. Well, I mean, I suppose the best fights in the series were in the first movie, but this definitely has the best animation, I'd say, in the editing and the art direction. The art direction itself is all amazing. The action in this movie is just great. The way everything flows through stuff like Shen briefly fighting the Kung Fu masters, the ending, of course, the ending, where Po deflects the cannonballs and says, "Inner peace, inner peace, inner peace." And then he briefly makes the yin yang symbol as he spins around. It's incredible stuff. And then I like the rickshaw chase. I know a lot of people don't like the middle section as much with Poe and the Furious Five getting to infiltrating Gongman City, but I liked it a lot. I didn't think it slowed down the pace or anything. It's fun to get a story that's a lot darker than the first one. It's good to get something a little more lighter about halfway through to amp you up. As Marty Eisenberg said, when you've got your audience laughing, you've got them engaged. And this movie is definitely funny, just like the first one. Then, of course, the star of this film, Lord Shen, the main villain, played by Gary Oldman, who was apparently Dracula once or something. I mean, I've never seen him before, but I think he could play a good Dracula based on this. Yeah, I do prefer Tai Lung from the first movie just a little more as the main villain, but because Tai Lung was threatening, because was incredibly threatening, even though he was just one single guy. They did such a good job. Shen, while very threatening on his own, he's only more so threatening because he has all these weapons and a huge army. On his own, he's not that powerful or anything. Still a great villain though. And once again, much like Tai Lung, he has a somewhat tragic backstory, I suppose, but that backstory doesn't make him a sympathetic villain. He's the most horrible, evil DreamWorks villain ever, by far. Well, except for maybe the Pharaoh from The Prince of Egypt, but I've never seen that, so I wouldn't know. And yeah, also I like the jokes they make about him. They don't take away from his menace. In other movies that could easily happen, or other video game stuff like, yeah, Sonic reference. Eggman's a lot harder to take seriously in, they say, the IDW comics, when he's supposed to be threatening, he's supposed to have done all this stuff, but then when he's constantly has jokes made at his expense, he's not threatening anymore. But for Shen, that's not the case. Everything is done just right. DreamWorks is good at doing things just right. Another movie they did later on. I'll review that someday. Anyway, yeah, Shen is really good. I like when he finally meets Poe. He was amping himself and preparing himself, looking at himself in the mirror, practicing lines he'd say, while also having the soothsayer comment on how kind of ridiculous he's being and how that warrior of black and white is going to defeat you. Because yeah, his entire motivation is just he was kind of messed up when he was younger, and his parents went to a soothsayer to see what would happen to him, and the soothsayer said that if he continued down this dark path, he will be defeated by a warrior of black and white, which of course means he went to go murder every single panda. He seemingly killed all of them, but as the narration says, um, by trying to change his fate, he only sealed it. And then, of course, he dies at the end after Poe makes it to the last boat with Shen still on it, after Poe has destroyed all the cannons, and he's asking, how could you have achieved inner peace? And Poe says, yeah, well, scars heal. And he says, wounds heal. Yeah, scars fade away, I guess. What do scars do anyway? And Shen, duh, not wanting to redeem himself, I suppose. He's still obsessed with being evil, tries to attack Poe anyway, and then ends up having the boat crash on him and he dies. That's what I like about the villains in the trilogy. They're not sympathetic or anything. I mean, I guess they are, but by the end, they don't all of them have the chance at redemption, except well the first two anyway. But none of them take it because they're so obsessed with themselves and not wanting to change their ways. They'd rather just die than turn good. It's pretty interesting. You don't really see that too many times in stories. Then of course, it can't be a great Kung Fu Panda movie or great movie really without great music. Hans Zimmer and John Powell returns, and while I'd say I like the music from the first movie just a little more, I'd say that's more so because of it just did stuff like it used kung fu fighting in the credits and it created Uguay Ascends and all that other music, like Tai Lung's theme and the Sacred Pool of Tears and all that stuff. The music here is still great though, especially the music that plays when Poe stops all the boats at the end. That was great. Uh, that's all I really gotta say about the music. Yeah, I don't know how to. I'm not a music critic, so I wouldn't really know what to say. But I always mention the music in these DreamWorks reviews because the music is very important. I mean, DreamWorks doesn't just hire some random guy off the street like the Sonic movies for their music, or most cartoons these days. They hire actual professional music people that know what they're doing, have done great work before. That's always a bonus. And great music shouldn't be a bonus to a movie. That should be essential. Then there's the direction, which I already talked about in the action bit. The direction, instead, John Stevenson and Mark Osborne didn't return for this one. So instead, Jennifer Yun Nelson directed this one. She directed all those cool 2D scenes in the first movie, and I think she was involved with the story a bit, so she did understand Kung Fu Panda, and she did a great job here. As I mentioned before, the direction in this movie is probably the best it is in the entire series. The way everything looks, the editing, the way it moves, it's all really impressive. As I mentioned before, I really love that bit, the climax where Po briefly forms the yin yang symbol. Congratulations, director. Yeah, that's all I really got to say about direction. Unless I guess the cinematography ties into that too, because yeah, the movie is very well shot. Everything looks impressive. It looks big. It looks high budget like it is. And that's all I got to say about Kung Fu Panda 2. I will be posting again one more time this week, which should be another Sonic video. Hopefully that'll get more views, and hopefully this will get more views. So in the comments down below, what did you think of Kung Fu Panda 2? Did you think it was the perfect sequel? Because yeah, it expanded on everything in the series. Which, now that I think about it, my YouTube titles really don't have that much to do with the actual videos, at least these film reviews anyway. So yeah, I suppose the it's a great sequel because it does everything right that the first movie did and then adds its own things. Poe doesn't just go through the same arc, he goes through something different, but it still adds on to what happened before. The villain ties into his past, which is always good. Shifu we see he's achieved inner peace because of all the stuff that happened at the end of the first movie. Yeah, so you see my page on Casting Call Club, and as always, keep on juicing.